All right, overseas, Germany's Christian Democrats, the nation's center-right party, has won that country's federal election. The party's leader, Friedrich Merz, is likely to become the nation's next chancellor, with his party securing 208 seats and roughly 29% of the vote. The campaign's focus was dominated by long-standing concerns over Germany's economy and immigration policy. Current Chancellor Olaf Scholz's left-leaning party finished in third place with just 120 seats and 16% of the vote. The nation's far-right AfD party finished in second place, winning 152 seats and roughly 21% of the vote, nearly double its margin from the last federal election in 2021. Let's bring in former editor of the Financial Times, Lionel Barber, live from Brussels, where the EU holds most of its key meetings, and staff writer at The Atlantic, Graham Wood, as Liz Pease posted just before the election, is entitled, "Germany's Anti-Extremist Firewall is Collapsing."
Thank you all both so much for being with us. Lionel, why don't we start with you? You have the most fascinating shot of all.
Yeah.
And you were also in Brussels, the de facto capital of Europe. There was a belief that perhaps because Musk, Vance, and others were leaning in and trying to support AfD, that they would do much better than the 20% that they've been projecting for the past several weeks. I'm wondering, is this another example, as we've seen in France with the last two elections of Macron, where the center is held? We have that centrist grand coalition holding things together in Germany for the next few years. What are your thoughts?
Well, the center has barely held because the CDU, as you say, didn't get over 30% of the vote. It's a disaster for Olaf, the bookmaker, the spreadsheet guy, Scholz, the chancellor. His party, center-left, got around 16% of the vote. And the hard right, they doubled their vote share compared to 4 years ago. Now, that means that the AfD, backed by Musk, and I think more than a few others in the Trump administration, are now the opposition. However, here's the sliver of good news. There is likely to be a centrist, what they call a grand coalition between center-right, center-left, and sort of right, which will keep out the AfD. Something to watch. Will Elon Musk say that there should be, that the AfD deserves to come into government? That would be a shocker.
Well, it looks like Elon Musk interfering in Germany's elections worked about as effectively as a German politician trying to tell people in Peoria, Illinois, how to vote. I'm wondering also, while we're looking at good news here, I'm wondering whether the business community may think it's good news that a pro-business German leader is now in charge, because the German economy is right now struggling as much as it is, number one. And number two, we played a clip earlier in this show of 10 years of warning from Morning Joe that the EU's immigration policy was too lax and it would lead to the rise of far-right parties. I'm wondering if Merz is not filling that void now, not being a far-right conservative, but at least speaking to the concerns of Germans after, Merkel brought in 1 million Syrian refugees without even screening most of them.
Well, Joe, you're dead right about the handling immigration. And the government actually in Germany has already suspended Schengen, the free movement of people within the EU and into Germany. And there are going to be much tighter immigration measures. And the success of the hard right is definitely due to fears about immigration, also crime. Now, to answer your other question, we're not in Washington here, where President Trump has got total fealty for the moment from the Republican Party. He's got all his nominees through. You were talking about Kash Patel and others, Tulsi Gabbard. With Germany, Mr. Merz, Chancellor-elect Merz, is going to have to negotiate a coalition. And that will be, if it's with the center-left, what the business community are looking for is, can he actually push through economic reforms? Can he get a release on the debt brake, which is like a balanced budget amendment, it's a law, which is preventing investment? I mean, Joe, Mika, the German trains don't even run on time as well as the British. We're in a terrible state regarding German infrastructure.
Well, the trains had always been, of course, the line there. Graham, you were covering for a while now the rise of the AfD. In fact, you spent time in Germany. You even attended at least one of their rallies. You did a deep dive that's on the Atlantic site now, a must read. Tell us a little bit about what you learned there and the party's new and growing role in that country.
Yeah, the main thing I learned was that the AfD was aiming its fire at the CDU, at the center-right. I mean, the AfD was saying that the center-right, which just won this election, has to be destroyed, totally dismantled. That they invoked Trump, they invoked Elon Musk, and they said they led the way. They destroyed the GOP as it existed before, and we're going to do the same thing to the CDU. Now, the CDU, having won, it looks like a victory for them, but the AfD also measures their victories in different ways, too. So getting 1 in 5 German voters for them was a huge victory because it meant that they couldn't be ignored in the future. So what they might be shut out of government, they're very likely to be shut out of government, but what they were afraid of was that they would have a showing that would be poor enough that they could actually be banned as a party, be investigated by law enforcement, and what they've got is a showing that makes it impossible for them to be completely ignored politically.
So, Graham, talk about the people you met at the AfD rally. I mean, there's a kind of a slightly easy language in which this is the inheritors of the fascist party and is racist, anti-Islam, homophobic. The people you met and talked to, how did they feel about that perception of them?
They were sincerely offended by it. You know, there have been many cases where AfD supporters, AfD members have said things that charitably we could say were neutral about the history of Germany and about the SS. So the AfD has quite a lot to answer for. At most of the rallies that I went to, and I went to some of the strongholds of the AfD and went to their political rallies, there were no racial slurs that were used. There was more anger directed toward the center-right politicians of Germany than toward immigrants. But look, this is a party that adopted as a slogan, Alles für Deutschland. Alles is the name of the leader of the party. Alles für Deutschland is also one of the mottos of the stormtroopers of Nazi Germany. So they seem to kind of encourage a bit of ambiguity, some dog whistles, some understanding that even if we're going to be personally not racist, personally not offended in many cases, the party as a whole is okay with some of the iconography, some of the symbolism of Nazism, and that's a very unsettling thing to hear when spoken, especially in German.
So, Graham, with that's the backdrop here, right? They may be trying to project a little more professionalism, but the underpinnings are all there, very disturbing, as you say. So how would you forecast now coming off of what for them was a remarkable showing this weekend, even if a little less than maybe some of them had hoped, or that Elon Musk and J.D. Vance perhaps had hoped? You know, how do you foresee the role they'll play going forward now with this new government in place in Germany?
So I think you can look at some of the states where they've been very popular. So I was in the state of Thuringia, one of the places where they've been most popular in the past. And in fact, in state parliament, they won a plurality of votes there. But they were not in government because all the other parties joined a coalition against them and made them just shut them out. So what was the effect of that? Supporters of the AfD were angrier than ever. Their view was, even when we win, we lose. So now that they haven't got enough of a share of the federal parliament to actually be in government, to be most likely in government in any coalition, they're still going to feel like they've been shut out. So I feel like this is sort of a reckoning postponed with the AfD and the rise of the far right in Germany, because their supporters are going to look at their fairly strong showing, a stronger showing than ever before, and see that they're still being shut out. And that's going to make them mad, and whenever the next reckoning comes, the real reckoning, it's going to be pretty severe.
And, of course, their strongest showing in East Germany, former East Germany. Staff writer for The Atlantic, Graham Wood, thank you so much. His latest piece is available to read online now. Hey, Lionel, back to you in Brussels. Let's talk about Europe's response to Ukraine, the growing Ukraine crisis on the third anniversary of the war. I've been showing the Wall Street Journal editorial talking about all the times Vladimir Putin has lied to American leaders. We've, of course, had Murdoch's Wall Street Journal editorial page, the New York Post, even some on Fox News striking out against Vladimir Putin, saying clearly he is the dictator who began the invasion. And yet Republican senators, for the most part, strangely silent. How's that being received in Europe? And what does it mean long term for the EU's relationship, not only with the United States, but also its relationship towards the idea of defending itself now without the help of the United States?
Right now, Joe, the biggest concern in Europe is that we just won't have a seat at the table when the future of Ukraine and the security guarantees or not, and the future economics of Ukraine will be discussed. At the moment, it's a US-Russian discussion, a Trump-Putin discussion. And there's a big contrast with, for example, 1989, 1990, after the fall of the German Wall, Berlin Wall. The Bush administration went to great efforts to bring the Europeans on board and actually strike a partnership of equals, as in their words, with Helmut Kohl of Germany. Right now, Germany is being treated as an adversary. The thing to watch is this week, President Macron will have talks with President Trump and our own Keir Starmer. What's he going to say? Well, he will, I believe, send a message. If you get this wrong, this could be like Afghanistan, the retreat. It could be chaos. So be careful what you wish for. Dismay, in other words, that so many people in the Republican Party and in MAGA are not prepared to say the word dictator when it comes to President Putin, and instead want to cozy up.
You know, that is, of course, distressing. I will say, interesting. Two people who you would not normally put together, Keir Starmer and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, issuing the same warning. Lindsey Graham letting Donald Trump know that if you think Afghanistan was bad, the retreat from Afghanistan, just wait. That will be nothing compared to Ukraine if you turn it over to Vladimir Putin.
And France's Emmanuel Macron is actually at the White House right now as we speak.